Okay, let's get the screen share going. Put my music up. That's what I'm gonna do. Okay, great. Should be able to see everything okay. If not, let me know. Okay, so this is week 4. I'm excited. All right. So I think I initially labeled this relationships and support systems. The reason why I wanted to cover this is, I mean, obviously relationships are always important. I think they're from my work as a therapist, I actually was trained early on in this model called interpersonal psychotherapy. And it was really on the basis of recognizing that anybody came in was really always an interpersonal issue that was going on that resulted in people coming in, even if the focus was on other symptoms. It was often because it was affecting their relationships in some way, shape, or form that usually resulted in people coming in. So one, they're just huge support, huge in our life. And I feel as leaders, it's a little bit more unique. It just feels a little more unique dynamics compared to people that aren't in leadership roles. So I'm sectioning these off as mentors. So our own mentors, and then the people that we serve, and then personal. All right. So a mentor is someone who sees more talent and ability within you than you see in yourself and helps bring it out of you. I like this one. I know Bob Proctor, probably not everyone likes him. I know he's a little, whatever, but I like the quote anyway, so I decided to use it. So I like this because it's less about teaching a modality, discipline, anything, and more about facilitating the growth in someone else. And if you have a mentor, that's how it feels to have that person in your life. So I feel like mentorship is a massive part of life, and I don't think it gets discussed enough. So when I was wanting to talk about this, I started reflecting back on my life and realizing how having a mentor in some way, shape, or form was always very important to me. And I just naturally sought that out. So, and that happens naturally, when we're born, obviously our parents, siblings, family members, all kind of like naturally engage in that process for better or for worse. And then we go to school, and then our teachers become our mentors, we get jobs, and our bosses become our mentors. So there's always mentors in our life, regardless. But then obviously as we get older, we start to have a bit more choice on who those people are in our life. So I think having someone that's chosen and someone that is like outside of friends and family has always been really important for me in my life. I can think of professors, teachers, and then people I hired after that. So as we age, we're able to be more selective about those who we wish to receive energy and advice from. When I worked at a mental health clinic, I determined that those who were leaders in this arena were people that I didn't want to emulate, like in any way. That sounds a little negative, but I'm not saying they were terrible people, but you look up, right? You always, at least I'm always looking up and being like, okay, if this is the path that I stay on, this is where I'm going, right? And so I was kind of looking at those people again, not that they're bad people. I just realized I didn't want that for myself. So that was a little hard for me. And I think in my more immaturity, I used to make up for that by my ego kind of getting in the way and getting a little conflict based and things like that. But now when I, with doing the work and growing and looking back on it, I realized the genius in me doing that was trying to protect myself so that I didn't become that. So I didn't go about it in a enlightened way, but it's helpful to recognize, oh, that was the genius of that. And now I'm aware of it. So now I know not to not to act like that in the future and just recognize, oh, this path isn't for me. This mentor isn't for me. I can move in a different direction here. So what I had done was I had decided to hire my own consultation outside of work, which did help me to feel held in an intellectual, emotional, again, the typos, I didn't even proofread this time, in supportive way that I knew would enhance my growth in a way that would serve me as a human and serve my career. So another big thing is if you feel entitled to a mentor, you'll be less likely to search and pay for a good fit one. And that's something I also recognize too. Like working on my own entitlement, recognizing it's like, well, this person should do that for me. And why aren't they helping me with this? And why aren't they showing up like that? And they should just, you know, so that's something to be aware of. I think it's very human, right? And again, that's coming from a place of insecurity of like, I need something that someone else has. So usually that might be a boss or someone above you. And like, I need this in order to do a good job myself. And that can create a lot of conflict. But what happens is if you just kind of focus on the entitlement of what you want and complain about it, you're going to expend all your energy complaining and not like, okay, well, maybe this isn't a good fit. Maybe this isn't where I want to be. Where do I want to be? And then actually making steps to find that and taking that self-responsibility, like we talked about a couple weeks ago, to do the work to find what is actually a good fit for you. So I wanted to point that out because I've noticed those blocks within myself. So I just wrote a few like reflection questions, like who are the people in your life that you look up to? Do you feel like there's a gap of mentorship in your life? What areas of life are you desiring more support around? And can you give yourself permission to receive support in that arena? And what do you look for in a mentor? So I think these are good questions to help be more intentional around mentorship. Because, I've also, have chosen mentors and maybe they're not the best fits. But I also am very big on focusing on what I do gain from everything I decide and not getting caught up on, oh, that was a bad decision, or I shouldn't have done that, or they're no good for me. Because I believe we learn from everything. And I know I've talked about that so far. So I kind of just wrote these questions for just some more self-reflection and being intentional around it. And the other big thing, I have all these asterisks here because this was big for me. Mentors, like every relationship, will not be able to meet all of your needs. And when you feel your needs are not being met, this is great to have conversations on what those needs are so they can explore ways to meet them. So back to the entitlement, another thing that I've struggled with is wanting more from my mentors, coach. I'm using the word mentors, but it can be coaches, but whatever, anybody. So yeah, so this kind of really looking at, am I wanting this person to do it for me? Am I wanting them to give me the answers? Or am I allowing them to help my growth and guide me? And so that's kind of like a perfectionistic thing of in my life. It's always great that I've naturally wanted mentors and would gravitate towards people and build those relationships. It's awesome. It served me in a lot of ways, but there was also being aware of the insecurity around that of, I just want someone that knows to just tell me what to do so that I don't screw up and that everything goes perfectly for me. So I think this is a big, important thing as well, to kind of check those expectations that they're here to kind of help serve your growth and they're not here to do it for you. So that was a big learning for me. So wanted to point that one out. Okay. Next quote. The delicate balance of mentoring someone is not creating them in your own image, but giving them the opportunity to create themselves. So kind of similar theme here, but now we're flipping the roles and seeing ourselves as leading our people. Okay. More typos. The people you serve are not a part of your support system. I wanted to talk about this because there's, a relational dynamic with everybody. And it's important to be mindful of your role as a leader and not a receiver. However, we can't stop ourselves from receiving from the people that we serve because we're going to. And so this is really more about just bringing awareness to that instead of just pretending I don't receive from them and I only lead and I only give, that we are likely to receive validation, care, a sense of accomplishment, pride, whatever it is, that's going to happen. So it's not to say I can't let that happen, but just be mindful that you are receiving that from your people, especially because when you don't, something happens, there's like maybe a conflict or whatever. If you're unaware of that dynamic, it'll be harder to catch like that your ego gets like hurt and offended when that like goodie is suddenly pulled away from you. So I just think it helps our emotional response when that happens, right? Because that's always bound to come up because again, these are relationships, they're dynamic, they're back and forth, nothing's ever great all the time. And it's good to be aware of it so that you know that you're not seeking it. So it happens, right? We can receive it, but when it's the people that we serve, we don't want to seek the validation, care, accomplishment, and all of that from the relationship. So, and also noting, and we can talk more about this in a bit, is also why it's important that you receive those things outside of work, outside of the people that you serve. So if you're only feeling important and special and loved at work, that's likely going to be a problem in your life, right? And then it does put you at greater risk of exploiting. I know that sounds like a heavy word, but the people that you serve, right? Because your natural needs as a human, if they're not getting met outside of work, you will naturally look for those to be met at work, and then things just get a little bit messier. So yeah, so just kind of be aware of what you are receiving so you can be mindful of all those dynamics. So yeah, so as a leader, it's your job to empower others to be themselves and to encourage their own growth and evolution. Personally, I'm not a fan of structured models for how someone should be because I think we're all unique, and I believe it's important for people to be in their own unique expression. And so I think if we also kind of focus on that person's growth and evolution and kind of activating that and supporting that, instead of just this like I need to teach a model or something, I think it just kind of helps prioritize it in that way so it happens a little more naturally. So your clients, customers, employees, all have their own strengths and weaknesses. And as a leader, it's important to always serve the highest version of that person so that they can step into the growth. Instead of doing too much handhold, or the opposite, not enough support, which I kind of go into I think that's on the next slide. So yeah, so it can be hard to balance the dance of not hand-holding while being supportive. There are times in which your people will need to struggle a bit, and there are times when their struggle is so big, you have to step in and do a little bit more. So during these times, it's possible for the relationships to get a little tense. And I think this is helpful that we can kind of reflect on the highest goal and then what steps have a better chance of progressing forward versus what's going to keep us stuck at those times. And again, I think this is where the ability to have tough conversations is huge in getting through those rough patches, and our ability to not react emotionally from our own place of lack is essential here. So this kind of goes back to, we're going to lead better the more of our own shit that we're aware of and that we're working through. It's just how it goes, because what's happening is your people are going to start projecting all their shit. So like I was just talking about, like me as getting mentored by someone and me projecting all my shit of you're not helping me enough, or I need this from you, or you don't care, right? Whatever that is, the people we serve are going to do that to us. So again, which is why I always like having a mentorship, so I can hopefully work on my messiness with those people instead of it being so messy with the people I serve. And that's not to say that you're not going to have messiness with the people that you serve. You will. But, you know, obviously if I would have to choose, I would rather have my mentor see me act like, you know, crazy person than the people I serve act like crazy person. So, but yeah, I do feel like a big part of this and working with anyone as being in that leadership role is this dance of not doing too much, but also being supportive. So oftentimes it's often the people that I work with fall on the air of doing too much for their people instead of not enough. So I'll talk a little bit more on that side. I'm not going to talk about the other side because I feel like it doesn't really apply as much here. So if you notice you're doing a lot of hand holding or you're doing more work and so forth, that is likely due to either like a need that's being met, like I'm important, or I have to do a good job, or I'm going to feel like a sense of failure if I don't do a good job. So I need to do more and more, right, in order to do a good job so that I can feel good about myself. So kind of look at, so if you're doing a lot of hand holding, there's probably a need of yours that's not getting met in your life somewhere, and you're trying to get it met from your people, and you're doing the hand holding as like a means to control so that need will get met, right? Yeah. So that's basically to be aware of, like, okay, what's going on within me? And it could be seeing your person struggle or not getting what they want or saying no to something. You know, I talked about this, I think a couple weeks ago, around feeling disappointment. Like, can I handle feeling disappointment? Can I handle my employee or my client or customer being mad at me or not feeling like I did a good enough job, like I gave them bad service or that I'm incompetent or, you know, whatever. Because those things are very, very scary, right? Because then you can get like a bad review on Google, and people, you know, because people do kind of really shitty things when they feel their needs aren't being met, right? So oftentimes I feel like as business owners, there feels like there's a lot on the line to keep people happy. And so we have to really work on recognizing I'm going to be okay, even if I can't make this person happy, and it's not worth it to extend myself too much just to make this person happy. And that's when we kind of go back to, I feel like, this radical responsibility piece of, I know I can do what I need to do to be successful because I am good at my job. I have plenty of, positive results of what I'm doing, and not to focus just on like one negative situation. So yeah, so those are all the things that come up, I think, as we stop hand holding too much to then work through. I kind of went down a rabbit hole, but there you go. Okay. I feel like I'm moving through these fast today. Okay, French. So I was excited in undergrad. I took a lot of philosophy classes. And Aristotle's was my favorite. And I thought it was really interesting. There's like a whole section in Nicomachean Ethics on friendship. And for some reason, my like 19, 20-year-old self just thought, I was just like blown away by that. I don't know why. I don't know if anyone else has ever felt that way, but anyway, so I wanted to use him on here. Friendship is a thing most necessary to life, since without friends, no one would choose to live, though possessed of all other advantages. So we could have everything we want in life, but if we don't have friends, then we're not satisfied. At least that would be most people. There might be a very, very select few that would be satisfied without friends. Or they're like a monk or something, you know. Okay. I feel like this starts off a little aggressive. Not everyone in your life, even the people closest to you, are going to agree with your decisions and actions in life. And it's not your job to convince them of what you have decided. So it's important to notice that our support systems do not always need to be in agreement with us, but there needs to be like an agreement of love, right? It's the idea of, I care about you as a person, I'm here for you as a person, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they always have to agree with us. And I think this gets really convoluted a lot, and that's what I notice a lot in relationships. I notice it myself, I notice it with my clients. That how can we allow ourselves to just receive support from the people in our life and not feel like we're on trial and have to have like this is what I did and this is why I did it and I need you to agree with me, because if you don't agree with me, then I'm not going to feel loved and supported, right? So I think we block ourselves from a lot of love and support because we get the context like tied up in that. So I think it's important to kind of like separate that in your personal relationships. And in that way, I think we can receive more support from our person and also just be able to then be in our own autonomy of doing what we want to do. And obviously, when I'm talking about doing what you want to do, I mean like choices in your business or your life that are going to like not super negatively impact someone. Not that I think anyone's going to do that, but I felt like disclaimer, because people are like, well, what if you want to blah, 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 excuse me. And I'm like, well, do you want to blah, blah, blah? Then I guess we can have a conversation about that. Otherwise, that's your mind coming up with like extreme examples, just to like avoid the topic at hand. Another thing the mind likes to do. And so I feel like when we can more have energy behind our own decisions and what we want to do and not have to have the other person to be in agreement with us, that helps us to be able to more objectively hear the advice or suggestion from the other person as well without taking it personally. And then when we can have that a little more objective view, then we can decide like, okay, thanks for the advice, or I appreciate it, but you get to decide at the end of the day. So yeah. And I don't know if you guys know this, because your friends are always going to want to often give advice and be supportive and so forth. But your business is your business. Your work is your work. You are the expert there. But if we can untangle some of the stuff, yeah, you can receive that. But at the end of the day, it's your decisions, and they're there to kind of just support you. They're not there to help your business. Again, which is why also I think having mentorship and so forth can be really helpful, because they're not your friends or family and they have a different objective, right? Okay. So if you're feeling drained in any relationship, it's important to begin to set boundaries within the context of this relationship. So now we're kind of going into like boundaries and so forth. So, setting boundaries can feel really scary, both professionally and personally, but now we're talking about personally here. So one thing is, if you want to continue the relationship, whatever it is, if you're already putting up, you're already putting at a greater possibility for success, because lacking boundaries will lead to resentment and expectations that cannot be upheld. It essentially sets the relationship up on false premises. So in your personal life, whether it's just like friends, family, romantic relationships, I think it's important, okay, am I starting to feel drained anywhere? And the quicker you can notice it, the better, because if you're feeling drained, there's often you're trying to maybe win them over, get something from them. There's a need, back to these needs, a place of lack, right? And we're trying to get it met. So we often will relax our boundaries so that need gets met from that person. And then we keep doing it so that the need gets met. But like I said, then that sets the relationship up basically for failure, or at least a lot of conflict, because you're presenting yourself in one way when you're actually not that way, right? You don't want to be that way. You're just acting like that so that you can get what you want from that person. So really be mindful of when you start to feel drained, because that's a sign of a boundary that you have not established in that relationship, basically. And then the quicker you can establish that boundary, the more successful that relationship's going to be. So if you keep ignoring it, then you're just putting off that conflict to be bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point that when you do have it, you've presented yourself as this person that you're not, and this person thinks you're somebody else, and then it's like, well, I don't know if I even want to be friends with you, like I don't even know who you are, and it can be really damaging. So yeah. Okay, so I think we must learn where we feel we're lacking in our life, so that we know that we're looking for fulfillment in those places in other people, right? So again, I'm talking about personal here, but I touched on it earlier, professionally as well. It's just important to notice that. And we don't need to pretend that, oh, I don't believe I lack at all, because that's fine. We're human. We're going to feel like we're lacking. That's all right as well. So kind of take an honest look. And again, I will perceived lack here, because again, that's important to recognize. This is my perceived lack. That doesn't necessarily mean I am lacking here. So kind of write out a list. And also notice the people who you feel are bridging those gaps in your life, so that you're mindful of what you are gaining from your relationships. And again, to pretend we're not gaining anything from our relationships, I think is silly. They do give us stuff. So this is the idea, is just to be mindful of where we feel we're lacking, who's kind of filling those gaps. Again, so that it doesn't spill into getting it from the people that you serve category. So it just brings it all in more awareness. And if you're more aware of what you need, this allows you to be more direct with the person on what you're needing. And if you know exactly what you need, you can directly ask for it. Yay. So you say, I'm needing this right now. Are you able to provide it for me? So yeah, so if we kind of take that inner inventory and we face it within ourselves, work through the emotion in ourselves, it's going to be way less scary to just be more direct with what we are wanting or expecting from the people in our life, you know? So it's okay to have wants and expectations for people in our life. It's not okay to have them without communicating what they are. So yeah, so if we can kind of take inventory, reduce that any like shame, guilt, whatever we have going on, then we can directly ask for that. And there's a good chance you might actually get it. You know, I've talked about this in the past, like, you want something, ask for it. So anyway, so like I said, obviously relationship topics huge. So I just wanted to like do this really broad scratch the surface. That I could go into each nuance thing for a long, long time. But I figured for now it might be helpful to just kind of take inventory around those like main 3 areas: your personal, the people you serve, and those who you receive from, like in some sort of maybe like mentorship type of role. Kind of explore where you're lacking in these areas, what you feel needs improvement, and what's going well. So I figured it's just kind of maybe a good idea to be aware of that, what the roles are, what I'm receiving, where I'm feeling I need more. Um, so then we can start to be more intentional about these categories in our life. And then when we're more intentional, we feel more empowered, and then we feel more like a leader and will more likely thrive instead of kind of feeling like you've been thrust into the world and there's all these people doing different roles and you're just kind of bouncing back and forth. So yeah, so that's it for the presentation part. Da, 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 and okay, so I'll stop the recording.